up, everyone? Hope y'all are having a great day so far. My name is Lily Oñate. I'm with the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence of East San Gabriel and Pomona Valley and Partnership for Positive Pomona, local coalition. Thanks for checking out our series today on the National Drug and Alcohol Facts Week, where each day of this week, a coalition from Los Angeles County will be getting real and answering your questions about marijuana, alcohol, vaping, and prescription drugs. We hope that these videos inspire conversations about drug use and addiction and how they affect our communities and especially our young people. Just a quick reminder before we get started, Rethinking Access to Marijuana, also known as RAM, will be going live today, March 22nd at 7:35 p.m. to answer any other questions you might have about marijuana and anything that we didn't get a chance to answer. So why don't we get started? So today, asking all the tough questions, we have Destiny Bocanegra with the Southland Young Marines. Destiny, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us something about it.
Hi, thank you. My name is Destiny Bocanegra. I'm 16 years old and I'm currently a junior at Warren High School in Downey, California. And I'm part of the Young Marines program, which is a nonprofit youth organization with kids ranging from ages 8 to the completion of high school. We focus a lot on teamwork, leadership, and discipline, as well as living a healthy, drug-free lifestyle in which we wear these red paracords to represent that. And we also focus on community service and helping out our veterans any way possible.
Thanks, Destiny. And answering the questions today, we have two representatives from RAM, Rethinking Access to Marijuana. Ladies, would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah. My name is Brenda Villanueva. I'm actually the current chair of Rethinking Access to Marijuana, and I'm also the program director at Pueblo y Salud. I also want to give a shout out to Destiny. You seem like an awesome chick. That's pretty cool. What you guys are doing in the community, I commend you for that, and thank you for being with us today. I'll go ahead and pass it on to Janelli.
Hello, everyone. My name is Janelli Juarez. I am the secretary for RAM, and I am also the program director at NCADD out in the San Fernando Valley.
So thanks, both of you, for introducing yourself. So let's get started. Destiny, do you have your first question?
Yes, I do. So the first question is, how long does it usually take for someone to get off of an addiction?
Go for it, Janelli.
Okay, I was like, I felt like we were in a trivia and we have to like race to it. I'm like, I got it. So for someone to recover from an addiction, honestly, it's really dependent on the individual. It depends on the individual. It depends on the substance that they've been abusing and also their support system. So it's really difficult to say like X amount of time for someone to like get off of drugs or anything like that. It's definitely a process that takes time and it's all like individually based. And then Brenda, if you want to add anything to it.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that recovery looks very different for different folks. I think you were right on the money when you listed the different factors that it takes for that. I personally grew up with an alcoholic father, and it really took decades for him to really kind of start honing that down. So I think one of the things to understand is that when people are in recovery, through the course of your life, you're kind of through recovery in maintaining that sobriety. So there's really no timeline for it. It's up to the person, and how ready they are and committed they are to that, step up to recovery.
Thank you. Our next question is marijuana really a gateway drug to other drugs and substances?
You can go ahead, Brenda. Nodding your head.
Yeah, I know that this is like one of those, arguments that people make that it's not, but I know the biggest argument to say that it's not a gateway drug is because there's a lower incidence of addiction with marijuana use, but that doesn't mean that it cannot open the doors. Obviously, it's not the same for everybody, but I can at least speak from my experience growing up and what I've seen, and most of the time when people start using, whether it's alcohol or marijuana, it really opens up the door to try different things, especially with those substances where they feel the repercussions, especially when they're legal, right? When I was younger, they wasn't legal yet, but it was still attainable because it was allowed through, as medicine. But with that being said, because it opens the door, and it's like I guess the perception of harm is seen as a lesser drug, and most people don't even think of them as drugs. It opens the door to use actual, like other drugs better yet. So it's one of those like case to case basis. It's not a very like black and white answer, but it's just more like a kind of like sobriety. It depends on the person. Obviously, not everybody that smokes marijuana is going to do X, Y, and Z, but there is a high rate of people that start off with marijuana and then they start using other drugs.
Yeah, I agree with Brenda too, especially with like the passing of marijuana or like recreational marijuana use. There's like that perceived risk, right? That or there's no longer perceived risk when using marijuana, where it's like, okay, well, this is safe. Like, let me see like what else I can try. But exactly how Brenda said, this is all just like individually based. Like there's no really like black or white.
Now, with that being said, is it true that smoking marijuana helps with anxiety and stress?
Again, I feel like this is depending on who you're asking, right? Like, I think depending on who you ask this question to is like an answer that you'll get, because some people will swear that it does, but just as many people are saying that it does not. And then when we think about marijuana, right, it has like two major components, right? It has like the THC and the CBD. The THC is that psychoactive component to the marijuana. And what we've seen with THC is that it does have, or it does increase like anxious symptoms. So there is an increase of like anxiety, or not anxiety, I'm sorry, but like heart rate and like those like thoughts that lead to paranoia.
Yeah, and I actually want to add to that. I think the big factor here too is not only are you dealing with two different compounds of marijuana, because you got to keep in mind that that's just two of like the 400 plus that it has, right? There's a lot of different cannabinoids, and only those two have really been researched. But there's also the fact that there's different strains of marijuana, and how THC reacts on the body also depends on the strain. Like people will try to tie sativa to more of a very psychoactive or more hyper type of high, where they compare indica-based ones to ones that will knock you out, right? So kind of like what Janelli said, it really depends on the person. But what we do know and what research has shown is that THC is a stimulant. Anything that really increases your heart rate, increases brain activity, pretty much, and I don't want to say like brain activity, but just like that anxiety level, or just, all of those factors that contribute to how your brain reacts, that is considered a stimulant. And with that being said, the funny thing about drugs is that sometimes what you perceive or what you're thinking doesn't necessarily match what your body feels. So for people that are, high, a lot of the times they feel slow, their reaction time is not all there, but yet their heart rate and their organs are working double time because it is a stimulant. So that's another disconnect.
Thank you so much. What is more dangerous, smoking and vaping or taking edibles?
I wouldn't say that there's one that's more dangerous than the other. It's just more how the body reacts to it. For example, with vaping, one of the major, even vaping is very different from smoking the actual plant itself or the flower, because with vaping, to get it to be that oil or that extract, they've really extracted the THC. So it's very high potency THC because you're mostly getting that cannabinoid, but you're not getting the other cannabinoids. So it's kind of like a quick high, which in turn, because it comes as quick as it, or it goes as quick as it, people get it, it has a lower offset, meaning that, they'll feel it right away. They tend to use it a lot more. So you'll see people kind of vaping more. Where with, let's say, an edible, the danger with that is that it takes anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half for it to hit the person. And sometimes because they're not feeling it, they might tend to overconsume. And so by the time it hits, it'll hit them really hard. And on top of that, it's going through the liver, where when people smoke it, it doesn't. It just goes straight into the bloodstream. So once it goes through the liver, not only are you, kind of like digesting it, but the liver in a way changes the chemical makeup of it. So it makes it more potent when it hits you because it changes it, not to be like the nerd here, but it changes it from delta 9 to delta 11, which has like a stronger offset. And for that, the people feel the high much longer. So the danger, I guess, with that one is that people can't control the intake because it takes so long to feel. Or when you smoke it, since it goes straight to the bloodstream, you're kind of feeling how high you're getting, if that makes sense. But I wouldn't say that one is more dangerous than the other. It's just that one has tend to kind of lend itself to overconsumption because of how long it takes. But that doesn't mean that people cannot vape a lot and overconsume either. So, that's what I would say the major difference is.
What Brenda said. That's exactly yeah. Completely agree.
Can people lace marijuana products with other things?
Yes. They can. Brenda, you're shaking your head. I feel like you want to answer this one too.
Yeah, I mean, not to I feel like this question in itself doesn't need like an in-depth discussion, but yeah, obviously right now we see a lot of, cross-fading, whether it is people smoking while drinking or, even just lacing the different types of marijuana. Like there's people that will take the bud and then do the concentrate around it to kind of like feel more of that THC. And there's also, the fact that you could mix tobacco with the flower. I've seen people lacing marijuana with PCP. So yeah, it lends itself, especially in the illicit market where you really don't even know if what you're getting is pure marijuana. Especially with being able to just extract the THC on the cartridges, it could be mixed with many different things that you may not be aware of. So yeah, there is potential to actually lace weed.
Now I heard you mention Delta 9, Delta 11. What is Delta 8 THC and has it hit California or Los Angeles yet? Because I heard that it is really big in Texas.
Ooh, that's another good one. That just popped up in our radar not that long ago.
I just learned of Delta 8, so Brenda, you can answer this one too.
Through the work that we do, we work with obviously a lot of prevention folks, but we also have opened up the door to really have communication with those that are in the industry. And something that they kind of started seeing, and this is mostly in the illicit market that's not being regulated because obviously they don't have licenses. But what we're seeing is that the way they're going around this or circumventing sales is that the CBD, which is what we know as the medicinal component, if you will, that's not psychoactive, they have found ways to convert that into Delta 8, which makes it basically a psychoactive. They kind of found a way to make it into a THC cannabinoid. It's not as strong as Delta 9 from what we hear, but to be honest, there hasn't been concrete research to show if it's less potent, more potent, or about the same. But the thing is that it does have psychoactive components. We're not really seeing it so much in the legal market as we are in CBD shops. They sell it in smoke shops, which they're not even supposed to be selling products, but they kind of, get away with it by saying that it's CBD when it's not. But basically it's taking that hemp aspect of it and trying to convert it into a psychoactive form so that it can then actually have the properties that the marijuana that we know has. And obviously they're derived from the same, species, cannabis, so they pretty much are one and the same.
Thank you. And I've seen a lot of this on the famous app called TikTok. I know a lot of teens are on that now. If you drink cranberry juice or any other fruit juices, will it hide the weed from your system when you take a drug test?
No. Simple answer is no, it won't. Anything that is fast or easy to make, no. For marijuana to naturally pass through your body or for your body to detox it is between 30 to 60 days naturally. So if TikTok is telling you that you can just make this cranberry juice and you're good to go, nah, you're not.
Yeah, we to add to what Janelli said, we have to remember that unlike alcohol where you could in essence get it out in different forms With marijuana, it's not necessarily that way because it begins to store in your fat, you know. So because of that, that's why it has, you know, that length of, you know, it leaving your body with, or it's 30 to 60 days. So yeah, cranberry juice, I mean, it's gonna make you go to the bathroom a lot, but it's not really gonna flush that THC out. So no is the answer. Not a life hack.
Many adults smoked when they were kids and they were fine. Will it be okay if teens smoke too?
Go for it, Janelle. You seem like you're ready to answer.
No, it's it's raining on my end.
Oh, okay. You know what? I'm gonna get real with this because I feel like it's important. But you know, I can speak from experience. I actually, when I was in high school, I used marijuana for like about a year. And actually, to be honest, that really threw off a lot of things for me. I lost my scholarship. I definitely, because in essence, you know, when you start consuming these things, it really like it takes up your time, to be honest. So I really didn't have focus neither on sports, academics, and because our brains are still being developed. You know, honestly, at that time I was like 16. You know, like I didn't know any better. And so with that being said, obviously it slowed down certain things. I only used it for a year, but to be real, the main reason I stopped personally, I have a heart condition, and there's really not that much information out there to really talk about how, you know, marijuana impacts people that have chronic illnesses. And I think that's like the big no for me from the industry, is that they're not really candid. Like they try to make it like it's natural, it's this and that, but it's really not. Once something is processed to be used or consumed as a drug, it loses that natural state. Because if we think about it, cocaine, heroin, tobacco, they all come from a plant. But obviously, once they're processed to be consumed as a drug, they're no longer natural, you know. So I would say definitely no. You know, I know that there's a lot of people in Hollywood and athletes that use, but not everybody's case, you know, is the same. And, you know, I'm not trying to bring privilege and race into the combo, but that's the reality. For most POC folks that are low income, the reality is not that they're going to be successful, even though there's this whole branding and painting, like you could be a rapper, you could still do all these different things. But that's not the reality for most folks, you know, and that's not what the industry sells. So, you know, based on how it affects brain development, you know, I'm not going to say that it's going to make you the dumbest person in the world, but it does affect IQ, and it does affect drive and motivation. So with that being said, if you kind of stick to this, it'll affect you in the long run, you know, whether it's your health or, you know, the other parts that people don't talk about, which is success, you know. But yeah.
And to add on to what Brenda is saying, one, like obviously like the brain development, I was actually just reading that if you use at like a young age, your IQ drops 5 points, which is like a lot. But even just going like beside that, you know, the marijuana that people are smoking now is not what your parents or what their parents were smoking like back in the day. Like it is 10 times more potent. And just as we were talking earlier, right, like it's being laced with things. So there's stuff in the marijuana that we don't even know of yet, you know, or we don't know how harmful it can be to a person. So will you be okay? You know, but like, why are we gonna take that risk? Like we don't know yet, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of like saying like, which way do you want to die? You know, like there's no really worse way. You know, I know that that's get brought into the conversation a lot. Like, oh, is it, you know, what's the worst to do with marijuana or alcohol? But it's like they both impact your body. You know what I mean? And they both affect you in many different ways. And I think anything that alters, whether it's your mind or the way your body performs, is already going to affect your health and have all these different effects. And I know that because marijuana is not like, you know, meth or anything else, people want to brand it as it's safe to use and it's natural. But realistically speaking, there's no study to actually take a look at your insides to see what that looks like long term when you've been smoking for years. You know?
Brenda, you kind of already mentioned this on the previous question, but here on to the final question. Did you use marijuana or have friends that used it as kids? And if so, what would you tell your younger self?
Oh man, I would definitely, if I could go back, I would not I feel like, because I was a nerd growing up, I still am, but it really did, I think it took my priorities away. Obviously, I'm still alive. It didn't kill me per se, but, it did affect a lot of, I feel like I would have had an earlier start in a lot of things if I would not have done that. I feel like I would have definitely made starter in soccer if I would not have, because I already have a chronic illness, and obviously adding this really affected it. To be honest, for me, if I'm gonna get real candid, the reason I stopped is because one of the times that I used it, it was laced and I wasn't notified, and so it really, really affected me because it had another stimulant on top of it, and I have a heart condition, so I really felt like I was gonna die. So for me, like from that moment on, I was like, I'm done with it, like drugs and everything. So it really kind of, it took that moment for me to really be like, nah, I'm done with this. But yeah, if I could talk to my younger self, I would definitely tell her no. And I always tell my friends, even the ones that are adults, I'm like, the decisions that you make now are always going to have a ripple effect. And particularly, I'm 34 right now, so a lot of my friends are well off in their mid 30s, but a lot of them are parents too, and so I kind of go from the angle like, what's the message that you're trying to send to your children, and then just having those real conversations, on how are we upkeeping ourselves, to improve ourselves, and are we really, like, I guess the question I pose to them is like, do you really feel like using this adds to your life? Like, how does it benefit you? And if it doesn't, like, reevaluate what you can change, But that's kind of how I go about it.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely just having that conversation about like priorities and what it is that you prioritize in your life. Because like growing up, I was around friends who smoked and used, and it's just kind of like, all right, like what are we doing, And then like telling my younger self too is just like, is it worth it? Like how, like what is this bringing to your life? Like how is this contributing to the greater things that you want to do with your life? Like is it an asset or is it not an asset? And many times it's not. Because it definitely takes you from what you want to get accomplished. But what I would tell other people is that when I was in the 8th grade, I watched this movie called Lean on Me. And if you haven't seen it, it's a really good movie. It's from like the late 80s, but I promise it's like worth it. And there's like this one specific scene that has like stayed with me, like pretty much for like most of my life, where it's like it's with Morgan Freeman. So he's on the roof with like one of his students, and he's like having the drug talk with him, and he's like, it kills your brain cells, son. And that line, that specific line is like, oh, maybe I shouldn't use drugs, but that's a movie that you should all watch. And that's like the one quote that has like stayed with me and that I hope to pass on to others.
Thank you so much. And that is it for all the questions that I have. I definitely have to watch that movie, Lean on Me, because that does seem interesting.
Like a young Morgan Freeman, and I like highly recommend it. Like 10 out of 10. Super good.
Instant classic. I agree.
Yeah, I think the opening scene too is like with Welcome to the Jungle. So it's just like sets the tone. But okay, I'm done talking about this movie.
All right, I guess I have to watch that movie now because I don't know if I ever have, especially with the young Morgan Freeman. But I wanted to thank you three for participating today and answering these questions, some of these tougher questions, and getting personal with your responses. So thanks, Destiny. Thanks, Brenda. Thanks, Janelle. And for our audience, there's a lot of great information that was like shared today. Some tips and some ideas, and a little bit about some new substances that are out there, including T8. What was that? Delta 8 now. So we want everyone to know that tonight, that if you're watching, or if you know someone who's having a hard time and is coping using substances, they're feeling a little overwhelmed, they feel alone, they feel unsupported. We just want you to know that we're here to help, and we want you to know that you're not alone. And you can always reach out to any of the coalitions that you're going to see this throughout this week, and we'll do whatever we can to get you connected. Again, I just want to let you know that RAM, the Rethinking Access to Marijuana Coalition, will be going live on March 22nd at 7:35 to answer any other questions that you have about marijuana or marijuana substances that we didn't get a chance to answer today. So they'll be going live. So hopefully we can see you all there. And again, thanks to our viewers, and thanks to our interviewer and to our interviewees for participating tonight. And we hope you enjoyed and you learned something. Thanks.